Good day, students at home. You're welcome once again to another edition of your program, School on Air. Biology is back on air, and I hope the SS1 students are there with their pens and their notebooks. And just like I always say, not only SS1 students, SS2 and 3 will also benefit from the class. So let all students stay and listen to what we have for today. We are still looking at classification of living things. Classification of living things. Now, you know one thing about science. Science is dynamic. And what's the meaning of dynamic? Dynamic means that science is not static. There's no end to knowledge in science. Where you start and you end is where somebody else will just begin his own. So science is very, very dynamic. So we are looking at classification of living things. Several scientists tried to classify living things. And you know science will pick the best of it. So many scientists put in their efforts, but eventually one man's effort was rewarded in the person of Carolus Linnaeus. So we can say Carolus Linnaeus is the father of classification. It is his own form of classification that was agreed upon by all the scientists and which was taken. Now, Carolus Linnaeus classified all living organisms into two major kingdoms. We have plant kingdom and the animal kingdom. He classified all living things into two kingdoms, plant kingdom and animal kingdom. Now, plant kingdom is called kingdom plantae, and animal kingdom is called kingdom animalia. Because in exams, if you are given a plant, maybe you are given an hibiscus plant, and you are asked, what is the kingdom? What kingdom does this specimen A, maybe hibiscus plant, what kingdom does it belong to? If you say plant kingdom, you'll be wrong. You say kingdom plantae, then you are giving your score. And then if you are given an animal, maybe a rabbit or an insect, a grasshopper, and you are asked to classify the organism into its kingdom, if you say animal kingdom, you'll be scored wrong. But you have to say kingdom animalia. So we have kingdom plantae and kingdom animalia. Now, it was discovered that so many unicellular organisms don't even fit in to this plant and animal kingdom properly. So many unicellular organisms don't fit in, so many of them. And so because of that, biologists now, what we now did is that they now place living things into 5 kingdoms. Into 5 kingdoms. Just because we noticed that we cannot conveniently put all living things into the 2 kingdoms properly. And so eventually biologists now agreed, and we now place living things into 5 kingdoms. So instead of having just 2 kingdoms, like kingdom plantae and kingdom animalia, we now have 5 kingdoms. What are these 5 kingdoms? We have kingdom MONERA. We have kingdom protista. We have kingdom fungi. We have kingdom plantae. And then we have kingdom animalia. Remember, initially we just had plantae and animalia. But 3 other groups have been added because we can't conveniently put those unicellular organisms into plantae and animalia. So we now have 3 extra. We have MONERA, protista, and fungi. And we are going to look at them one after the other. But before we do that, there is a very, very peculiar organism called the virus. You must have all heard of the word virus. And when you hear the word virus, you always tremble when you hear the word virus. You know, we can't even put virus into any of the 5 groups. Virus cannot fit into the 5 kingdoms that we have. So virus is put in a class of its own. Now, virus cannot fit into any of the 5 kingdoms. So we treat it especially and separately. Now, virus is a microscopic organism. If you can say microscopic, you'll be very correct. Because virus is so tiny that you cannot even see it with ordinary microscope. You can only view a virus, with an electron, which is one of the most powerful microscopes. It is the tiniest of living things, or we can put it as a living thing, because we are going to see virus as a living thing and as a non-living thing. It is the tiniest of all, and it cannot be seen by ordinary. A microscope that will view a bacteria will not view a virus. A virus is much, much smaller than a bacteria or a bacterium. Now, Virus does not have a cell structure. It doesn't have a normal cell structure, but it is just made up of a coiled, what we call a ribonucleic acid RNA or a deoxyribonucleic acid DNA enclosed within a protein coat. So a virus is just made up of a protein coat, and inside the protein coat there will be either an RNA ribonucleic acid or a DNA deoxyribonucleic acid. That's just the structure of a virus, a protein coat and then an RNA or a DNA. Now, what are the characteristics of a virus? Now, it is microscopic in nature, like we said, microscopic in nature. Then it possesses either RNA or DNA. Those are the characteristics. Then it reproduces not by binary fission. Now, you notice that most unicellular organisms reproduce by binary fission, but not a virus. A virus has another form of reproduction, we call it replication. It only replicates. Now, a virus does not respire. It does not feed. It does not excrete. Now, we talked about the characteristics of living things. A virus does almost none of the 7 characteristics of living things. It doesn't respire. It doesn't feed. It doesn't excrete. Now, it is responsible for causing many chronic diseases, such as smallpox, measles, AIDS, name it. Virus, they cause a lot of these chronic diseases. Those are characteristics of a virus. Now, let's see virus now as a living thing, because we said you can either say it's a living thing or you can say it is a non-living thing. So why can we say a virus is a living thing? Now, we say a virus is a living thing because it can replicate. Its mode of reproduction is called replication. So it can replicate when it is present in another living cell. That's why if somebody today gets infested or with maybe an HIV, the HIV virus, you will discover that within days it would have replicated. It would have become millions in the body of that person. So that's, we call it replication. They replicate when they are present inside another living thing. Then they possess characteristics which can be transmitted from one generation to the other, which is one of the characteristics of living things. You're able to transfer your characteristic to your child. You are looking tall, your daughter comes out tall, you are fair in complexion, your son comes out fair. So that means you are able to transfer or to transmit things, your own characters to your own children. Oh, you are bald-headed, your son comes out bald. You are fat, your child comes out fat. So you are able to transmit. So virus also is able to transfer characteristics from one generation to another. But we can say virus is a non-living thing also. You can argue it and you'll be correct. Now, why can we say a virus is a non-living thing? It cannot live on its own. When extracted from a living thing and placed in a non-living medium, it forms crystals. The moment you take virus out of a living medium, it becomes crystal. It cannot function. It can only function when it is inside another living thing. So you can say it's a non-living thing. So the moment you remove it from a living thing, then it can no longer function. It becomes crystal. Then virus cannot respire. All living things respire. A virus cannot excrete. They don't respond to stimuli. They don't feed. And so they don't perform all the life activities that all normal living things perform. So on that ground, you can say virus is a non-living thing. Now let's start looking at the kingdoms that we have. We said we have 5 kingdoms. Kingdom Monera, Kingdom Protista, Kingdom Fungi, then Plantae, and then Animalia. So let's start with the Kingdom Monera. Now their characteristics. Now they are unicellular. In biology, you always start from the simple to the complex. So we start with the unicellular. All organisms under the group Monera, they are unicellular. They are made up of only one cell in their body. Then the cells are prokaryotic. What's the meaning of prokaryotic? They don't have definite nucleus. So when you see a cell that does not have a definite nucleus, you say it is prokaryotic. Then they have no mitochondria or chloroplasts. All organisms in the kingdom Monera, they do not have mitochondria, which is a place where energy is generated, and they don't have chloroplasts for manufacturing food. Now, they may be motile or they could be non-motile in nature. In other words, some of them can move. Now, you can see this organism. This is a bacterium. Now, you can see a flagellum, there. So that means this one is motile. There are some that don't have this flagellum, and so they are non-motile. So whether they can move or not. And then there is no sexual reproduction. All they have is asexual reproduction, which is called binary fission. So there is no sexual reproduction in the kingdom MONERA. This kingdom now is divided into two. Kingdom MONERA is divided into two. You have the schizophyta, example is bacteria, and then you have the cyanophyta, example is the blue-green alga. So those are the two groups under the kingdom MONERA. Schizophyta, e.g. bacteria, cyanophyta, e.g. blue-green alga. Now we look at the second kingdom protista. The characteristics first. They are also unicellular. They are made up of only one cell. And then they are eukaryotic as against prokaryotic of the other kingdom. These ones are eukaryotic with cell membranes and well-defined nucleus. So they are eukaryotic. Then some are motile and some are non-motile. You can see an example of a motile one. This is an amoeba moving with a pseudopodium or pseudopodia, plural. Now, some are heterotrophic. That is, they cannot manufacture their food. They engulf food like an amoeba. And then some are photosynthetic. That some of them have a green structure, the chlorophyll, and so they can manufacture their own food. So some are heterotrophic, some are autotrophic or photosynthetic. Then they exhibit both asexual and sexual modes of reproduction. Remember, we said that the first kingdom, MONERA, they cannot exhibit sexual mode of nutrition. They only, of reproduction. They only have asexual. But for kingdom protista, you can see now that there's complexity now. Kingdom protista have both asexual and the sexual modes of reproduction. Now, under the group protista, there are four phyla, plural. There are four phyla in this group. You have the protozoa, you have the euglenophyta, you have the chrysophyta, and then you have the pyrophyta. So we're going to look at the protozoa. We want to look at the first phylum under the kingdom protista. Now, for protozoa, which is the first group, the protozoans are also microscopic. That is, you can only view them under a microscope. You can't see, them with a naked eye. It has to be under a microscope. And then they are eukaryotic. What's the meaning of eukaryotic? They have well-defined nucleus. So they are eukaryotic, they are microscopic. Then they reproduce asexually by binary fission. They reproduce asexually by binary fission. Now let's see what binary fission simply means. Now, this is an example. This is a picture of an amoeba. Like I told you the other time, it moves with the pseudopodia. You can see them in various. We say amoeba does not have shape. The reason why it doesn't have shape is that it can move in any direction. It can move in any direction. So wherever the pseudopodia is moving towards, that's why the organism just simply flows towards that direction. So these are an amoeba now. You can see it capturing a prey. This is a prey, capturing it with the help of the pseudopodia. That's a contractile vacuole inside. It has a nucleus. Then there are food vacuoles inside, the endoplasm. Now this is the paramecium. The paramecium, you can see it looking like a slipper. Looking like a slipper, it is slipper shaped. It has a big nucleus and a small nucleus, a mega nucleus and a micro nucleus. So that means it has two nuclei, plural. Then you can see something like hair surrounding it. We call that one cilia, singular cilium. That is what it uses for locomotion. It will just be beating the water, and as it is beating the water, the organism will be propelled forward. Then you can see, the oral group, the gullet, and then the food vacuoles inside. You can see the contractile vacuole, the posterior contractile, and the anterior contractile vacuole inside the paramecium. Now, other examples of protozoa. We have the Plasmodium. The Plasmodium that causes malaria fever. And then you have the Trypanosome that causes a disease called trypanosomiasis. So all these ones are disease-causing organisms. These ones are not free-living. In other words, these ones are parasitic. They are not free-living. But the other ones that we have seen, the amoeba, the paramecium, those ones are free-living organisms, while a Plasmodium is a parasitic organism, even though they are protozoans together, but they are different in their ways of life. So that's a picture of a trypanosome, that causes a trypanosomiasis. And that's a Plasmodium. You can see it's looking so complex. That's what causes a malaria fever. Looking so complex, and it causes a malaria fever. Now, so far, we've been able to look at the classification of living things. And like we said, living things have been classified into just two groups initially. The kingdom Plantae and the kingdom Animalia. But those two kingdoms cannot sufficiently accommodate so many of the unicellular organisms. And so because of that, 3 new kingdoms have been added. We have the kingdom Monera, we have the kingdom Protista, and then we have the kingdom Fungi. Now, all these ones, we saw the example of Monera. You know, that's a bacteria, that of Protista, that's amoeba and paramecium, and then fungi. Examples of fungi, we have rhizopus, we have mucor. You know, those ones, they are non-green plants. They don't have fungi, they don't have chlorophyll, and so they cannot manufacture their their food. Now, we now have the virus, which stands in a class by itself. If you can either consider a virus to be a living thing, or you can say it's a non-living thing. And like we said, a virus cannot, it replicates. That's the only form of reproduction that it does. It replicates. Now, then we can see that a virus can be classified as both living thing and non-living thing. We then moved on to the characteristics of the kingdom Monera and that of Protista. And then from there, we looked at examples of Protozoa and Euglenophyta. Now, for the Protozoa, we use amoeba as an example. And we're talking about, binary fission. In binary fission, we said a protista, like a protozoa, they can have both asexual and sexual reproduction. For the asexual, we call it binary fission. In binary fission, the nucleus simply divides into 2, then the cytoplasm divides into 2, then you have 2 daughter cells, then you have 2 organisms in a split second. You have 2 organisms resulting from 1 organism. That's what we call binary fission. Now with this, I'm going to give you some assignments to do. You are going to write your answers, and then you are going to send it, to the address that will be put on the screen. List the 5 kingdoms to which living things belong. The 5 kingdoms to which living things belong. Why is virus considered a peculiar organism? Why is virus considered a peculiar organism? Now, state 2 characteristics each of kingdom Monera and phylum Protozoa. Kingdom Monera and the phylum Protozoa. Now, you give me 2 characters. You can see a change now. Kingdom Monera, phylum Protozoa. Now, what kingdom does Protozoa belong to? Because phylum is Protozoa. It belongs to a particular kingdom. What is the kingdom? So, kingdom Monera, phylum Protozoa. Give the 2 characteristics each of these organisms. So, with this, we call it a day. I hope that by next time we meet, you would have done your assignments and would have sent it in even to the address that we put on the screen. Thank you. God bless.